and they, if money comes into the game, they're either co-opted or pushed sideways. So I just thought it would be great. Melanie's written a book about, I think, what, 100 women, is it?
Yes, there's 75 women interviewed in the book, but I did a global survey of 212 women from every continent, and a few of the cannabis queens are actually sitting in the room today.
So she's identified these people, and we need to somehow then use that energy to enact change. So Melanie, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure and honour to be here today. I definitely feel like the new kid at school and probably the least clever person in the room, but I do have a very special talent. And my talent is knowing smart and funny and wonderful women who work with cannabis and asking them really good questions. So I'll be honest with you, I had not prepared my speech. I started yesterday morning, and just like I imagine the political process works the night before a bill's to pass or whatever, I got on the phone and I managed to contact about 13 women across Iceland, the UK, Australia, and the US. I spoke with politicians, I spoke with activists, I spoke with professors, I spoke with independent consultants, I spoke with the 2024 Icelandic presidential candidate who ran on a drug reform approach. So my privilege today is to bring those voices into the room. I don't have slides because I just finished writing this now, because I've still got messages coming in with really great info that I wanted to share. So go with me on the journey, and I've got some strategies that were shared that I think we can maybe make use of. Okay, so the unmet potential of women in cannabis policy reform. With eyes to the UN, we really need to look at what's happening right here, right now. Because it's a lofty goal to inform UN drug policy reform. It's achievable, but not if we haven't built the foundation, and not if the systems aren't in place and working at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level. So how do we do it? I believe, and most of the women I spoke with last night and this morning concur, that there is a gap that exists between advocacy and actual reform. So between women who are parts of groups, women who are working in different parts of the cannabis industry and the community, and with the politicians who can actually get the job done. Now that gap is unintentional, it's no one's fault, and actually until I called it out, a few of the women weren't even aware of it. The reason I've identified it is because it is a golden opportunity. We are sitting on the greatest untapped potential you can imagine. There are women who have formed communities all over the world around cannabis, how to progress in every part of the sector, and they are all desperate to help. So let's find a way to let them. Okay, now some of these are going to be hot takes, and I'm open to questions at the end. These are my opinions, but also shared by the women, and I certainly welcome them to be challenged. Okay, politics within the system, designed by men for men. When a woman succeeds in politics, they're like a Trojan horse. So what I would like to do is to fill that Trojan horse with soldiers, okay? Women who will do the work to support. Advocacy is outside the system, largely. Anyone can be an advocate. An Instagram influencer right through to, Medcam Patients Network. It's really free form. There's really a low to no barrier to entry, and women thrive in those environments because they're creative, because we can create, we can nurture, we can build, and that is what we're good at. So, to the women's groups, I am calling on you to raise your gaze with greater political intent. And to the political folk in the room, I am calling on you to recognise the potential that is untapped that will help move us all forward. So, what is the role of women influencing the UN? Show of hands, who's familiar with Dr. Brittany Somerset? Brittany has worked within the UN for 14 years. She is a woman in cannabis. She established the first and only cannabis news desk. So her job is to accredit and coordinate all journalists who are speaking on, about, or with the intention of connecting with the UN for cannabis. During those 14 years, she has been advocating internally. Another Trojan horse. She was, in fact, instrumental in the rescheduling of cannabis and resin following over a decade of internal advocacy. I only know who she is because she introduced herself to me last week. It's a great demonstration of the fact that we actually don't know what resources we already have. We already have a girl on the inside controlling narratives. So I'll facilitate introductions where there's any appetite. Okay. Brittany's a great example to demonstrate that it's not only politicians and political power that are of value in shifting reform. Anyone that works influencing the cultural zeitgeist in and around UN stakeholders has impact. So Brittany, journalism, storytelling, controlling the narrative. Researchers and clinical voices to inform the WHO, the World Health Organization, who are required, as I'm sure you all know, to provide the scientific and medical data when policy reform is considered. That's their role. And then we need policy experts, politicians. We need people like are in this room to inform the UNCND. Because the WHO and the UNCND are going to work together, we can hit them from both sides, right? Also while we control the narrative. So there's lots of levers we can be pulling. So why elevate women specifically? Look, I'll be real honest with you. Every system that exists was built by men for men. Okay? No shade. I love men. Women have done very well within many systems and worked on the redesign, but the truth is that historically and systemically, there is gender inequity pre-baked. I'm not going to bore you with that because we all bloody know it, and if we don't by now, you're in the wrong room. Women experience and communicate cannabis differently. There is a very gendered experience of the plant. I won't judge you for not knowing that, but I warmly invite you to think on it. Women collaborate and amplify each other through community. Now, we're not all braiding each other's hair, believe me, right? We don't always agree. We don't always get along. We don't always do it right. But I don't place the burden of perfection on other women because I don't bloody want it placed on me. However, women understand that we are stronger, safer, and more effective together. There are around 15 women in cannabis groups in the USA. Notable ones, We Are Jane, Blunt Branch, Women Grow. Women Grow have been around since 2014. I don't know how many members they have, but they will have amassed plenty in that time. If we look at the world's largest women in cannabis group, it's out of Europe, based in the UK, led by Heidi Whitman. Empower her. 850 women across 36 countries. Who would like that kind of access into the cannabis industry to support your campaigns? I'm sure everyone. And even though we're taking a global approach, we may be politically active in Australia, but the plant lives everywhere, and there are lessons we can learn, and there is value that we can add, and there are ways that we can amplify messages that are occurring in Australia overseas. Think about a huge activation that you wanted to do, that you wanted media attention. Imagine if we spoke to Heidi, and Tia and I were besties with Heidi, imagine if we spoke to Heidi and said, can you get half of your members, 400 women from 15 different countries, to go out in the street and do X, Y, Z, film it, we upload it, we do a mass social media campaign. Can you imagine the power in that? One message in a WhatsApp. People are sleeping on these women's groups. And I would be happy to facilitate an introduction, as would Atia, I'm sure. In Australia, guess how many women in cannabis groups there are?
0, I think.
0. I don't have any more to say on that. Yeah. Okay. Leveraging communities of women to drive reform. Okay. These communities we're talking about, and I don't just mean Empower, and I don't just mean Women Grow. I mean, last Saturday night at my house, I had 5 guests over for the weekend. Every single one of them was a woman in cannabis. Between us, our reach on social media alone, in the hundreds of thousands. We are here, we are collecting in groups, we are powerful, and we give a shit. We really give a shit. We will help. We have the knowledge and we have the numbers, we have the reach. We are an untapped resource that any politician or stakeholder can draw on to progress the cause. So why does this disconnect exist? And it's not a criticism and it is not intentional, but consensus is it exists. My position today is to identify the gap to you and to suggest some strategies for consideration. Plant a feminine seed, if you will. I'm also going to highlight 2 models for reform, or certainly for engagement with players that impact reform. One is going to be the mind medicine model, and the other one is going to be the model that the AgPal group uses. The AgPal group are Australia's largest health accreditation organisation. They accredit 17 sets of quality standards, and no one has the ear of the Commission for Quality and Safety in Healthcare like they do. This morning I spoke to their General Manager of Partnerships and Engagement, and I said, tell me how you do it so I can share the knowledge. And she did. That's also where I worked for 5 years before I came to cannabis. Okay, before I get to the models, I want to address some of the issues. These are issues that were raised by the women that I spoke to overnight and into the morning. As I shared, there were about 15. I'm actually going to share their names with you because I'd like to hold them up. In addition, I would like to hold up all of the women who I reached out to at very last minute notice, including in sitting week, and we didn't manage to connect. But the stories and the issues I'm about to share came from the following people in the US. Sammy Pyle, who is the director of We Are Jane, one of the women's groups. I'm saying this as well so you hear the breadth of where this knowledge comes from. Delia Fakiri, she is the founder of Blunt Brunch, another huge women's cannabis group in the US. Professor Jana Champagne, she is a cannabis academic and activist. I also had calls in with Brittany in the UN, we didn't quite connect, and Steph Shearer, who will come back to me with learnings to share later, and I will pass them on. Steph is the founder and CEO of Americans for Safe Access, the largest patient organisation for cannabis in the US. She has also been instrumental in implementing policy in about 24 states, personally. That's a woman, an advocate who knows how to work with the political process. In Iceland, I spoke with Steinan Olina. Steinan is a leading hemp activist, and she was the presidential candidate last year. In the UK, I spoke with Heidi Whitman. In Australia, I spoke with Kate Thurman, Rachel Payne. Scott Edwards, the executive officer at Mind Medicine Australia, who told me all his secrets that I could share with you. Professor Kylie O'Brien, Kate Hall, and who's with us in the room today, and Jen Ravenswood. I also spoke with two people outside of cannabis, but within the health sphere, because although we're all guilty of it, the health industry and the cannabis industry are the same bloody thing. Okay? I spoke with Ronnie Beauchamp. She is the CEO of the Australasian Society of Lifestyle Medicine. She did her master's in Australian drug policy reform. I spoke with Emily Gearing, as I mentioned previously, the GM of Engagement and Partnerships at the APAL Group. All of those women shared their knowledge, and here are the barriers or the issues that they perceive. The first one, politicians broadly, not canna-friendly ones, but more broadly, don't understand the plant or the industry. So that fundamental lack of knowledge is influencing policy in the form of downvotes or potentially, policy rewrites that miss the mark. Number two, for policy reform, politicians need tools. We need a story. We need heartstrings pulled. One story of a patient who very unfortunately died by suicide and then continued to have subscription medicine sent to his home is one. It's a very sad story. It's one story. There are also 1 million Australians at home using cannabis medically, safely, responsibly, and reasonably. Okay, so don't fall for the clickbait. Number three, women's groups and advocates are not typically politically inclined. We come together for community. We come together to create a safe space to collaborate and to create commercial opportunities among a boys' club. They're also not funded. They're all volunteer. They do become a place to do business, but their focus really in terms of how they contribute currently without this activation and us coming together is that they raise individual profiles to support women to elevate their careers. We move them into positions of power and so on and so forth. It's a little bit like the Martha Network for those familiar. This is a big one. Women don't know what politicians want and need. Like practically, on the ground. We don't know. Yesterday, I asked Rachel Payne, and she was so good. She said all the things, and I said, Rach, I just need, give me 4 bullet points. Like, what's your wish list? The universe is not on a budget. And she said to me, the 4 things are, okay, haven't written them down, that's okay. The first one, that's okay, because I know them. The first one is obviously donations. Okay, Rach and David got elected on a $20,000 budget. Rachel's ideal bank balance is $100,000. In Victoria, you can only donate up to $1,000 undeclared, and the maximum donation is $5,000. These are not numbers that industry can't afford, but there's a lack of understanding and a lack of awareness about what actually help looks like. The other thing she needs is time, boots on the ground, who can volunteer, and it's not just, I pamphlet drop, I do the Greens thing every year, right? I'm like, I love all the parties, but I'm out in the Greens t-shirt harassing people at the polling booths every year. I love that shit. But it's not just that. There are skills that you have that you can bring. So we need donations and we need support. And this is across all parties. The other thing, and it's so critical and it never even occurred to me, is data. Data. You can run campaigns on data. That's evidence that you can use. That's evidence that can be used in Parliament. And the 4th one is exposure, advertising. Everything from sharing a post to donating ad time to putting a speaker on a panel. Let these politicians be seen, especially the women. And Kate had some amazing, awesome hot takes about the lack of visibility of her own work in drug reform and being placed off panels with men who were favoured, who hadn't done half the work. And I get it. So just put women on a stage, please God, and thank you for doing so today. So they're the 4 things. No one knows what anyone needs. So I think we need to communicate that better. The other thing is that competition for political influence is fierce. The orthodoxy, and that's Professor Kylie O'Brien's word, the orthodoxy, AMA, RACGP, have the ear of government. Okay, how can we compete? There's a couple of ways. I think a strategy is that we work with, and I know we're all trying, we need to find a way to work together with those parties, with those groups, the colleges, the peak bodies, etc. Better, but also we need to build our own narrative. All right, I could yap all day, but I've got 5 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is jump to the mind medicine model because I think it's really key. And I will be happy to collate some notes and share the rest of my bits after. That would be a pleasure to do. So, the mind medicine model. Okay. Again, I was speaking to Kylie yesterday and she mentioned it. And I said, who's your contact at Mind Medicine and will you give me their number? And she said, sure. See that? Women supporting women to get the job done. See how the 15 people I spoke to yesterday with no notice took time out of their days to talk to me, connect me, give me data and numbers? Women supporting women. Sean said it. Women get the job done. No offense, guys, you've done a great job. You've got this, you've done it, you've built it, we love it, but we get it done. So the mind medicine model, MDMA and psilocybin were downscheduled for 2 conditions, PTSD and treatment-resistant depression. I asked Scott, how did you do it? He gave me the steps. I literally have a playbook. Number 1, speak to the TGA. There had been a few successful SASBs, which kind of broke the ice, but the patients couldn't receive treatment because of state laws and state scheduling. The TGA said there is an option to apply to reschedule. They wouldn't have known that if they didn't talk to the TGA. We have to engage the regulators. Number 2, apply. They actually got denied and told not to try again. They didn't listen. That's good. Step 3, they reapplied. They got knocked back at the interim assessment, but during an application for reschedule, there is always a public submission round. The usual submissions that are received, the number is like 50, okay? When we just did the cannabis, the big cannabis, push, there were 5,000 submissions. Love it. Does anyone know how many submissions were received for the MDMA and Psilo reschedule? 13,000. 98% were in favour. Then, to build on that, they brought David Nutt over from the UK for 5 weeks to lobby. They put him in front of the TGA and the Department of Health. There were 100 attendees from those departments. They knew that the logic would be helpful, but they needed the heartstrings. Remember I said pollies need heartstrings? We need tears to activate people. So they brought in a beautiful woman called Vanessa. The video is still available on the Mind Medicine website. Her husband died by suicide from treatment-resistant depression while he was waiting for treatment with psilocybin. She stood up and told that story next to David, who gave all the logic, next to the public, who had overwhelmingly said yes. A quote, "Decision makers are humans too." That's how they got the job done. Let's learn from others, let's innovate, let's create, and let's bloody draw on the women because we know what we're doing. Thank you so much for your time.